Okay, so before we get too into this, I just want you guys to know I'm recently getting over an illness, so if I sound a bit off, that's kinda why. So in 2016, I did a series of reviews taking a look at the Spyro games that were released for the PlayStation 2, as I'm quite a fan of the original PS1 Spyro games. But before there was Spyro, there was another platforming mascot for the system, that of course being Crash Bandicoot. It seems that for some fans of the PlayStation, you are either more of a Spyro fan or more of a Crash fan, and to be completely honest here, I was way more of a Spyro fan. That's not to say I hate the original games. I think the first game is pretty decent but needed a better save system. The second game is the best but lacks some level variety, and as for the third game, well, we'll talk about that later. Anyway, Naughty Dog really grew a name for themselves with these games, but at the turn of a new console generation, they had to say goodbye to the Crash title due to contractual reasons. This now meant that the Crash title could be bought and developed by someone else. So along came Traveler's Tale to give their own attempt to developing a new Crash game. I mean, that's the generous way of putting it. Honestly, I'm more of the impression that they just wanted the Crash title because it was guaranteed money for them regardless if they put actual effort into the project or not. But hey, why don't we find out together if Crash Wrath of Cortex is worth playing? Well, why don't we start things off with the story. So much like other sequels in the series, things begin with Cortex lamenting after another failure. Annoyed by his continuous failures, Uka Uka starts to berate Cortex. But Cortex counters Uka's insults with an ass pull, that being Crunch, a more powerful version of Crash Bandicoot who needs extra power source in order to make him strong enough to beat Crash. Uka then comes up with his own ass pull and awakens the elements, 4 masks that represent the 4 elements of water, earth, fire, and air, who are apparently evil, I guess. Awakening these masks starts causing a bunch of storms to occur on Earth, which catches Aku Aku's attention. Aku Aku confronts his brother to find out he's released the elementals. Worried for the state of the planet, Aku Aku returns to Earth to inform Crash and Coco of what's going on, and that the only way of stopping the elements is by sealing them up with the power crystals. And there you have it, that's the setup. And it's okay. I have no problems with the simple premise for a video game, especially platformers, and this one does at least set things up and give a reason to stop the elementals. But I don't know why, this one just seems to be a bit lazy to me. Things don't really get interesting throughout the rest of the game, the story just never really progresses. As for the characters themselves, well, Crash doesn't talk and honestly has a huge lack of expressions, making him almost non-existent. Coco is there, and you never really see Cortex, which makes him very forgettable in this game, which is the exact opposite of how he was in Crash 2. But, you know. At least you get to see how annoying and uninteresting the elementals are, as well as Crunch. Actually, Crunch has practically no personality. He just hates Crash because he's supposed to, and the game needs some kind of villain, I guess. Okay, so yeah, the characters aren't great, as they're either forgettable or just plain annoying. At the very least, Aku Aku is still pretty well voiced and has the best voice acting in the game. Everyone else, really isn't that good. I will quickly mention the ending, so just skip ahead 3 seconds because this is gonna be quick. In the end, Crash beats Crunch, and that makes him good now, cause yeah. Crunch and Crash then fight off Cortex and Uka Uka, who end up in Antarctica. The end. So yeah, the story ends in a very anticlimactic way, and is honestly kinda stupid. Screw the story, we're moving on to the gameplay. Crash Wrath of Cortex is a 3D platformer. You have access to a hub world where you can save your game and teleport to the levels in one of the 5 different sections. One thing I really like about these different sections of the hub world is that you can play any of the levels in any order in each section. But what are the levels like themselves? Well, there are multiple different kinds of levels, but most of them tend to be linear levels that heavily focus on platforming. These levels are alright. The platforming never really gets too difficult or complex, though Crash himself feels kinda slippery, which can get you killed from time to time. And holy crap, these levels go on for fucking ever. Then we have the underwater levels, which all suck. I usually like water levels, but not when they're this bad. These levels are so slow and awkward, which makes them go on forever as well. things only get interesting when you can man a submarine when you get to shoot at enemies, but these still aren't all that great. There are flying levels where you can fly around in an arena to shoot down certain objects. I'm not really a huge fan of these levels because they aren't all that interesting. Thankfully though, they usually don't last too long. Then we have Coco's levels, where instead of playing as Crash, you play as, well, Coco. And damn, Coco is super stiff and kinda janky when it comes to her controls. Her jumping is short and low, as well as her roundhouse kick not having much of a range. It really pales in comparison of Crash's spin attack, which certainly feels more fluid than Jack's in the Jack series. I like the idea of her levels, even though I don't remember Coco knowing martial arts in the third or second game. But because of her controls, these levels also suck ass. However, the worst type of levels are the ball levels. In these levels, Crash is in some kind of hamster ball, which controls like shit. Not only are the physics off when it comes to this thing, but the level designs themselves are very poor as well. At least there aren't very many of these levels, though that doesn't keep them from being the worst levels in the game. There are also some minor gameplay changes in some of Crash's platforming levels, like being in a robot or these driving sections, and they really aren't that great either. Plus, most of these levels have rather poor layouts. In all of these levels, you need to collect a purple power crystal to unlock the boss of each section. This isn't all that hard since the crystal is always right in the open and you are guaranteed to run into them. You can also get a clear crystal by destroying all the boxes in the level. Don't get me wrong, it does feel good to destroy these boxes, but I never really liked this feature in the Crash games. Destroying all the boxes to me has always felt like padding, and a lazy way to give the player some more to do in the game. There are even other colored crystals that pretty much let you go to other areas in certain levels to find other boxes. There really isn't too much of a reward for getting all the crystals. If you do plan on destroying all the boxes, the game does at least let you know how many boxes are in each level and how many you have destroyed. Though get used to the feeling of missing one damn box. You can also get these onks in levels by doing these time trial challenges. Personally, I've never really cared much for time trials, so I just ignored these. They are at least there if you do feel the desire to complete them. Then we have the boss fights, which are fucking awful. Okay, I know there are people out there who do like the win boss fight, but I'm sorry, I just don't enjoy this fight. I will admit that it is the best fight in the game, but that really isn't saying much. Yeah, the bosses are just crunch mixed with the elemental masks. And while the fights are certainly different, I wouldn't say that they're very good. I'm pretty sure most people can agree with me that the water mask is one of the worst boss fights in the series. It has horrible hitboxes combined with poor timing with its attacks and just a non-memorable location. When you beat a boss, you will get a power-up for Crash, which is nice, though if you played Crash 3, then things feel rather repetitive here. These power-ups are useful, like getting a double jump and being able to use a bazooka to destroy faraway enemies and boxes. To be fair, the game looks okay. Some levels have detail to their environments, and for the most part, everything maintains a cartoon-like art style. Levels, like the underwater ones though, look quite boring, and the character models of human-like characters look pretty bad and have poor animations. Actually, there are very few animations for characters like Crash in this game, which is a huge shame, since it was the great and varied animations of the original games that really complemented its art style and charm. As for the music, well, it's okay. They did at least try to capture some of the familiarity of the older games. This could just be me, but the music just seemed to lack memorability and the punch of the original soundtracks. So, would I recommend Crash Wrath of Cortex? No. This game isn't very good. Levels aren't very well designed, the music is pretty forgettable, story kinda sucks, and there are a lot of crap gimmick levels. I wouldn't say it's the worst platformer I've played for the PlayStation 2, but it's still not a game worth playing. I'll give it this. It is at least less glitchy and flawed than Spyro Enter the Dragonfly, which isn't saying much because that game is pure fucking shit. They tried to make a Crash game that was heavily influenced by Crash 3, which is kind of the problem. To me, Crash 3 is the worst of the original games. It has some good ideas like a good hub world, interesting level settings, and power-ups, but Crash 3 has too many gimmick levels for me. I hate the racing, underwater, ski jet, and flying levels, and having unnecessary gimmick levels also hurts this game. Well, that and poor controls and pretty long loading screens between levels. If you're looking for a good linear 3D platformer for the PlayStation 2, then just go play Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. It's a far better game that sure has some annoying gimmick levels and a lackluster final level, but it's still miles ahead of Crash Wrath of Cortex. Well, join me next time when we'll take a look at the next game, a racing game.